everyone, long time no see, and welcome back to more Flesh and Bad. So we've been kind of busy with a bunch of nationals prep this last couple of weeks, so we haven't had a ton of time to record. But I wanted to kind of do a recap of, I guess, the U.S. Nationals experience, and also kind of like talk about the deck I brought, some matchups, and just a whole bunch of other stuff. So if you're interested in kind of like hearing about, I guess, my nationals notes and like some of the kind of like experiences I had, feel free to kind of stick around. So I wanted to get the elephant out of the room, I guess, early because I think I'm going to title this video "Flesh and Blood is Unfair" or something kind of clickbaity like that. But I do think that that is actually kind of a true statement. So I do think that Flesh and Blood is ultimately unfair, but I think it's unfair in the way that like you are intentionally trying to be unfair, right? Like you want to kind of bring a deck that is kind of doing the most unfair thing at any given time, right? And if we kind of look at like the top kind of like decks that we saw in like the U.S. Nationals, a lot of these decks are kind of doing something unfair, right? So you have like Florian, who has like this unfair kind of block potential. We have Prism, who obviously is just unfair, and a whole bunch of other like capacities. We have Gravy, who makes allies, and like all these decks basically have their own kind of unique unfairness, which is kind of what I wanted to kind of like center this video around. So basically when you're going into kind of like a high level tournament, I might have touched on this in like one of my like past tutorial videos, but like you want to be doing something that you feel is like unfair or has like an unfair advantage over your competition. So you're trying to win the games before the games even start, right? And that's kind of like my mindset when I go into any like big tournament is I want to bring something that has an unfair advantage over a bunch of other decks. So with that regard, I think that there are a lot of decks that were kind of trying to do this, right? There's like Syndra, who's trying to like prey on like just slower, more kind of like fatiguey strategies. There's Florian, obviously, who's just like generically good. There's like Mario and Arachne, who both have like these really insane like disruptive potentials, and then obviously like Kano and Prism, who are like your pseudo like illusionist wizards, whatever. And all these decks are doing something pretty unfair. But my specific version of unfairness was that I saw that Gravy was going to be kind of like at least a decent sized threat. I didn't actually know like how much Gravy representation we would see during that, but I figured that behind the scenes that some number of teams were kind of testing Gravy and kind of trying to figure him out. So I didn't know how high this Gravy representation was, and because it was US Nats, like the card supply was not necessarily all the way there. So like many people didn't get the opportunity to kind of like play Gravy or like test Gravy or like see what a refined Gravy list looks like, right? And I thought that Gravy was going to be like a little bit of a higher better percentage than he initially was. Like, and you're kind of always estimating when like you're kind of calculating unfairness, but I expected a Gravy to be in like the top 5 decks, and he's like what, top 7 decks, so kind of up there in terms of representation. So my answer to Gravy and a bunch of these other kind of like slower decks and also just like more aggressive decks or more like kind of redline decks was to play Jarl. Yeah, and I wanted to kind of show, I guess, what I brought to Nationals. So this is a very Earth focused Jarl, which is kind of bolstered by this new card, Everbloom Life. A very, very solid card, just being a blue Earth three block that also just kind of like enables like cards like Redwood Hammer. Also kind of just gives you more decomposed fodder, which you kind of had to run some like suboptimal cards before to kind of like enable that decomposed fodder. But this is kind of like this Earth Jarl list that I brought. And the reason why I brought this list, because I think that it does have like an unfair edge into certain matchups. Like I think you have a pretty good like surprisingly, the Florian matchup actually got a lot better once Germinate got banned, because you can kind of like get them to an end state where people have grasp like they can't really present like the one card fives right anymore. They're kind of like restricted to a little bit more fair damage. And you know, Jarl actually has like a lot of edge into kind of like more redline decks, like into like Slippy and Mario. Like I think those decks tend to run very few like pitch cards in general. Like they still run like a decent amount, but like generally they're a bit restricted. So like getting Frostbites and getting like channel like Frigid effects are very, very good. Yeah, so the deck that I was basically trying to target with this version of Jarl was specifically Gravy, and Gravy actually was a not as high as representation as I thought he would be, but he's still like a decent bit of representation. And this list I think does actually surprisingly well into Gravy. Yeah, so basically the strat with this kind of like configuration for Gravy is that you want to basically just be clearing allies every turn, trying to fatigue them, trying to soak up a little bit of damage so you don't get too low. And then eventually you just find the breathing room to play out a Crumble and then also play out either a Frozen to Death or a Dominated Mangle or something like that. And most often I think it's a Frozen to Death. But once you blow up Compass, their ability to kind of like develop out allies is like very severely kind of limited, so that then they kind of have to like pivot to kind of more of a like saving your allies in graveyard for the like the pop-off turn, and then do a bunch of like lead charges or diamond amulets or whatever to try to play out like Humperdinck and like 2 Sawbones or some other kind of like variation of that combo. But in general, what they're trying to do is they're trying to like attack you with a Humperdinck at some point, right? Or like try to get it so that you can't clear Humperdinck. And this deck I think does a pretty good job of like not letting Humperdinck stay alive. So you have like Oakenolds, which can deal with it. We have Fellings, which can deal with it. Pummels can also kind of deal with it, and as well as Mice Touch and Mangle. So we have a lot of answers for Humperdinck, and E-Strike also by itself can deal with Humperdinck as well. So the Gravy matchup actually feels like pretty good with this deck. I have not tested it against like some really good Gravy players, but Talishar Gravies are like absolutely free with this version of the matchup. Again, I'm trying to find like some actually good Gravies to kind of like test this plan into. Like maybe it's not actually that good, but like into like less experienced or less refined Gravies, I think that this was like actually a very solid kind of strategy for just like kind of teching for the matchup. And the one of Mice Touch also helps a lot, especially when you can get it back with effects like Everbloom Life if you like discard like fruits or something. Like the ability to like recur like E-Strikes and Mice Touches and like stuff with like Remembrance also is I think a very big like kind of deal in this matchup. So this was kind of like my version of unfairness in an attempt to kind of like tech from the meta. Unfortunately, we didn't see like Gravy representation get all the way up there, but I still think that this deck does like reasonably well into a lot of the other kind of like decks in the field. So like into Florian, for instance, I think he's also got a really good like he's got a very playable Florian matchup. I don't know if I'd call it good, but like I beat 2 out of 3 Florians I saw during Nationals in the Battle Harden. And I don't know like what their experience level is or whatever, but like I feel like this was actually like a pretty decent kind of like meta call into Florian specifically, just because it feels like you're able, once you blow up grass, you can kind of play the like Guardian back and forth game, and your end game is kind of almost a little bit better with like Oakenolds and stuff, because you also have like the access to the same Earth cards that Florian does, like Felling, etc. But they also kind of just lose out on grass, which I think is a pretty big deal. So I actually made like 2 different versions of this deck. This first version is for what I actually like played during Nationals, and my second list was a little bit more refined, assuming that like Gravy wasn't as big a deal, which it turns out he kind of wasn't. But this was kind of my spread. So my round 1 opponent was Azalea. I think they were a very good player. I think that Jarl does have like a little bit of an edge into Azalea, but I think the deck they were playing was very scary, just very solid, like disruptive Azalea, like Redline Azalea. But yeah, Jarl does typically, like Guardians in general, does typically pretty good into Ranger in general. So I felt like that kind of like was kind of like the edge in this matchup. Yeah, my next round was into Florian. I kind of punted a little bit as we were kind of approaching the kind of the clock. I think we had like 3 minutes left on the clock. I had like the ability to send like a Sledge to kind of keep them off cards so they couldn't like plume back a tree and kill me. But I forgot that they had plume, and I also forgot that they had a tree while I was rushing. So I like made a misplay where I like didn't send Sledge 1 turn, and that basically gave them like the breathing room to like play out a tree and kill me with it. So that was a little bit unfortunate, but it'd be like that sometimes. I think that basically like I was kind of like stressing as we went to time, and I think one of the biggest kind of takeaways from Jarl specifically is that I do need to kind of like practice a lot of these decks in paper before I like do this, because I think most of my Jarl practice was in like Talishar, just because I didn't have like a lot of testing groups locally and stuff. So I feel like a lot of the kind of like slowness, at least during my Nats experience for CC, was like mainly due to just like not being super familiar with like the cards in paper, right? Because there's a lot of like things you have to resolve that like Talishar obviously kind of does for you. Yeah, so I basically like had a little bit of misplay in the Florian where I could have sent Sledge but didn't, and then that kind of cost me the game, but that's fine. Into round 3, Puffin. Puffin seems just like a very easy matchup for this deck, and I also didn't see a lot of Puffins doing particularly well at Nats. Like, I don't know, the deck doesn't seem like it's all the way there yet. Like, it seems like there's still a little bit of experimentation to be had, so I'm definitely looking to see if we can like crack Puffin at some point. That might be like an interesting kind of deck to play on the channel, but like I've not seen a ton of impressive stuff come out of Puffin just lately, when especially like compared to like other decks that kind of do a very similar thing. Puffin doesn't particularly stand out to me, but like I don't know, especially for Jarl, like in particular, like it feels like I kind of just see Puffins alive. Into round 4, I played against another Florian. This time I played a little bit faster so that we didn't kind of get to time. For this matchup, I feel like I kind of did the thing where I just blew up grass super early and then kind of just like whittled them down from there. I think they both Florians were presenting Dread Scythe, but Dread Scythe's not like a super efficient answer. And like I have basically a bigger hammer, so like bigger hammer tends to do pretty good into like the Guardian Mirrors, especially if you can like do it off Tunic and stuff. So very nice kind of like synergy between the Tunic and the Sledge, and that kind of basically kind of it enabled me to kind of grind out this Florian player as well. And then the final round, I went to time against a Mario. I think we were both at kind of like a pretty low life total, but I think my Mario opponent like had like 2 or 3 cards left in deck. And unfortunately, we just like kind of like either didn't keep track of the clock, or we weren't playing to like a fast enough rate, and we eventually went to time, unfortunately. I think that if I had like 2 more minutes, I maybe have this game, but again, like it's hard to say, especially like because I don't really fully know what was left in like the Mario deck and stuff. But yeah, unfortunately, like I think that I went to time against two-ish opponents. Like one of them we didn't actually like go all the way to time, but one I did. So I think that might be partially on me, because I think you like the one thing about your RL is you need to play this deck very, very fast at like a high level. And I think that I'm a pretty fast player, but I also maybe wasn't as like practiced with this deck in paper as I was with like Talishar version Euro. So I think that maybe goes a little bit of ways to kind of like show like what kind of practice you need for like big tournaments like this. You need like not only just like the reps on like Talishar and stuff, but you also kind of like need the reps in paper to like get the mechanisms of like playing out the cards and like the tangible kind of play of it as well. So I felt like overall I did like pretty well in CC. In draft, I think I went like 1-2 playing Gravy. Gravy I think was my least drafted deck, at least when I was doing like drafts on like the Runaway server and stuff. My Gravy deck was, I think, fine. It wasn't like anything crazy, but I think that I kind of did like a little bit of a deck building misplay where I included like too many allies. Like I think I was running like 8 allies because I opened like two Scubas and a blood in the water. But I ended up like playing, I think, too many allies. Like I probably should have been playing like 5 or 6 allies, or maybe like 6 just in total allies. I think that probably cost me. I think I just like didn't know exactly how many allies you were supposed to run in like a Gravy deck. I thought it was between like 6 and 8, but apparently it's a lot closer to like 5 and 6 or something like that. So that was more so on me, just like not getting enough Gravy reps. And I think that kind of like was kind of my like weak spot in terms of drafting. But I do think my Gravy deck was pretty good. I think it was probably just more so of a piloting error. And one thing I also I think I played against Chris Yali in round 1 of my draft, and he was actually telling me that Scuba can actually target myself to put like yellow cards from my graveyard back on my deck, back into my deck, so I like don't fatigue. And I'm like, oh my god, that's so smart. I thought first of all, I thought like Scuba was like, yeah, so Scuba, if you don't know, you can actually target yourself with the ability. So the first thing I didn't actually like fully read this card. What I assumed it does is like the seafloor salvage effect. What I assumed it was the same effect as seafloor salvage, which is like turn a card in a graveyard face down. If it's yellow, create a gold token. But Scuba actually does like a completely different thing. What Scuba does is that when it stacks, you may put a yellow card for your graveyard on the bottom of its own decks if you do create a gold token. So this is like a completely different line of text from Seafloor Salvage, and it's really interesting that you can actually like use this to like recur some of the best threats in your graveyard, put them on the bottom of your deck, and also just like use them for blocking late game as Gravy. So that was kind of like an oversight on my part. I think I just didn't draft enough with this card, so I just like assumed I knew what it did, but I didn't actually end up reading the card. So that was a little bit of a blunder on my part. All right, next I want to talk about the battle hardened version of this list. So this version list I kind of tuned to be a little bit more like assassin like, or like kind of ninja focused, as opposed to like being focused on Gravy, because there wasn't a ton of Gravy representation. So I cut down on like some of the more kind of like filler cards like E-Strike, and I think I cut on like an Oasis as well, because I didn't see a ton of wizards either, and just brought in like an extra D-React, and also I think another like Plow Under, just to be a little bit more disruptive. But this version of the list was also, I think, fine. I think I'd probably, if I had to like stick to a version of the list, I'd probably run the original version, but this list I think also did quite well. So I'll show kind of my matchup notes here. So I beat another Florian, beat a Dory, beat another Puffin, which I think these are all like pretty good matchups. Mario, I think, also feels like I don't think it's a good matchup, but it feels like a pretty playable matchup. Like it feels like pretty 50-50 to me, especially like depending on like if I can blow up Flick Knives, or like how early I can get Flick out of the way, or like how much damage they're able to represent off like Kiss of Death and stuff like that. Like I think it very much is like kind of draw dependent more so than anything. But I was basically able to take like the first 4 opponents, and like I was kind of stressing at this point because a lot of these matchups are like very, or at least between Florian and Dory, I think like my Dory opponent was presenting like 70 something cards, and then my Florian opponent was also presenting like 60 something cards. So that it's like very stressful to like pilot this deck, knowing that like you're kind of both incentivized to like go to fatigue, so you're trying to like play as fast as possible. So yeah, if this deck is not for the faint of heart. If you want to like play this at like a high level, you need to be like a very fast player, and you also need to like communicate with your opponent very well. But I didn't go through time against any of the opponents because I played a little bit faster this day. And then round 5 and 6, I got paired into Victor, and Victor, if you don't know, is like got basically juiced by the new Fabled from the set, like Riches of Tropoldani. And I don't I don't know if the Victor matchup is actually winnable from the Jarl side. Like it's bad. Like it's really bad. And if you look at the actually like day one representation, this is from Nats, so I don't actually think I have like the battle hardened. But if you look at the Victor representation on nationals, like it was only 5 Victors, which is kind of criminal given how good that card is. Like Victor got incredibly juiced by that the new Fable, and I guess it kind of makes sense. Like maybe a ton of people didn't open the Fable, so they didn't have access to the cards. Yada yada yada. That kind of makes sense. But yeah, for a Victor who's playing like Riches of Triple Donny and then also just running like the other good Clash cards and like Gold Generation, like you get like 2 to 3 extra gold per game in the Guardian matchup, which is like kind of insane. So like you can play Visit the Golden Main State for like 8, and then like Jarl just like cannot deal with that, which is kind of crazy. So I basically lost to both of my Victor's opponents. I think that Victor is maybe just like very favored in terms of like the Guardian mirror, just based on that card alone. Yeah, so that was basically my Nats and my also battle hardened experience. My calling also was like kind of whatever. I think sealed is kind of a big format to some extent, but I know a lot of people did well as well. So yeah, I think that this deck was unfair. And if you look at the field, like I think it was like actually like a pretty reasonable choice. Like the only things that you're really not super excited to see are like Kano and Verdance, maybe. Like Prism's playable, New is like not great, but also playable. And then also like you're playable into like a lot of like the more redline decks as well, and like mechanologists and stuff. That also did make me want to mention that like for the new matchup, this was kind of like my strat in the new. Basically, I was kind of not running any good blues for them to get. There is one notable exception, which I'll get to in a bit. But basically what I do is I cut fruits in that matchup just so that they don't have like a attack to play from their banish, and they're kind of just limited to a bunch of like crappy non-attacks. The 2 blues that I think that New is actually excited to use are like Winter's Bite, which is like kind of deal withable, especially if you have like Tunic counter up or if you have like a blue in hand or whatever, so they can't like do multiple. And then the other bad blue for them to play is actually the new Everbloom Life card. So if you don't know that the news can actually kind of put codex on the bottom, or like they put like levels of alignment if they get like multiple of these. So this card is definitely something you need to be a little bit careful about, but I'm still running in the main deck just because you need the blue density. And codex in the card, obviously they can get it back, but like they get it back like multiple turns later, so it's kind of like a delayed effect, and it's only like on paper just 1 value plus 1 card in deck, so it's like kind of whatever. But I did end up having to run this into like news. I unfortunately didn't play against new, but we did play test this a lot into new, specifically on our little testing team, and I think that this is probably like the least bad card to cut. I could also see like leaving in the fruits and maybe bringing this in if you're like concerned about like fatigue and stuff, but like I think in general these are about very similar, because normally new also has like a couple ways to like get these back with the sacred art as well. So like you're it's basically bad regardless of which blue they get, and I'd almost rather them just have like a little bit of extra life and deck density than like 5 damage, was kind of the logic there. Yeah, so I think that's going to pretty much wrap up kind of like my summary of, I guess, like the Jarl deck I brought. I think it's pretty good, especially into kind of like the field. I definitely think this deck changes quite a bit, especially once like new leaves and like some other new heroes maybe like rise to kind of prominence. I think that Victor also might be pretty well positioned just based on like the strength of having like a tome in your deck, which is really cool. So yeah, I don't know. This deck might not like what I'm trying to say about this deck is that I don't think that this Earth version might be the best version, especially once like new leaves and like we get a bunch of like other new tools in the Guardian set as well. But this was a very fun deck to bring Nats, and I felt like I was kind of doing something unfair. I don't know if I was doing the most unfair thing, but definitely felt like I did have something that I was doing that was like a little bit special as opposed to like other decks that a lot of other people were running. Yeah, so I pretty much talked about the deck kind of ad nauseum to this point. And again, I went 7-1-3, I think, over the weekend. So I think I'm pretty happy with the CC results, especially for my first kind of US Nationals. And I'm definitely looking forward to, I guess, like the new next US Nationals, and also just any other big tournaments coming up. But yeah, with that, let's go ahead and try to get into some games and just see kind of how this deck plays. All right, Gravy Bones. All right, people have been telling me it's a bad matchup. I have not yet seen a Gravy who can convince me otherwise, but go ahead and give it a shot here. I can understand conceptually why people think it is a bad matchup. It's also my most, I guess, practice matchup. I've also seen, okay, so there's a lot of things I actually want to talk about with the Gravy matchup. I think that my sideboard is probably not like fully all the way there in terms of like what I want. We have a Frozen Death up pretty early. That's nice. I think we probably just want to maximize our filtering here. We don't want a Winter's Bite because that would give them the opportunity to get a card in the bin. Actually, you know what? A better thing we could have done is we could actually play the so. Or no, we can't play the so. That's fine. We'll go ahead and just pitch it here, and then I guess we can send in a redwood hammer. I think that's probably fine. They don't normally have like a way to like just throw a card in graveyard unless it's like blood in the water. But if a gravy's like playing blood in the water to me, I feel like that's kind of fine. Actually, Arsling the Mangle might be better this early. I guess it kind of depends. If we can blow up Compass early, it's obviously better to go for the Frozen Death, but I think the Mangle might be the higher priority Arsenal target. Kind of depends. We do find the Crumble early, so we don't really get punished for our swinging this that early. We might just be blocking the Midas Touch here and saving it for later. Seems like this might be kind of close-ish to the Brody list. It's running like 9 Golden Tipple. There are a couple lists that are running red and blue Golden Tipple. And I think this card is just like very, very solid in gravy. So I think our play is to play out the Crumble to Eternity. We could also... There's another line I'm actually seeing here where we like Imposing Visage for a Crumble Midas Touch their ally. We would give them a bunch of gold, but is that fine? That might be okay. I think it's like a little bit too greedy though. I think I'm just gonna block with the Midas Touch, and then maybe block Sawbones, play out Crumble, Frozen to Death next turn. I do think that this Frozen to Death might have been bad. Just because like Arsling and Mangle is like a little bit more impactful early. Just having the ability to like clear out an early what's that card called? Early Whaler Humperdinck is a bit better. Curious to see if they're gonna just part out some allies here. They do. That's not the end of the world. Oh, interesting. They're not gonna go for the ally there. Okay, in this case, what are we gonna do? So we might just imposing for 4, I guess just like overpitching and getting a crumble. This seems fine. Go ahead and put it on the compass, and then we'll have our Frozen for next turn. They don't play out like the allies. It's like pretty good for us still, just because like we don't have to worry about them right away. That means we have like time to like play out our Frozen Death and stuff. Still think his Arsenal was wrong, but we're getting kind of rewarded for it here. A little bit at least. So once you blow up the compass, there's a couple things that gravies can do to like basically make it so they have game. Like I think the cards like lead the charge or something that like gives you action points if you play out like a card with like a certain cost or something. There's like a couple things they could do. I feel like there's no real point in blocking this. Take a little bit of damage, especially since they didn't like gold bait hook it. What is their turn? We can like Frozen to Death, Arsenal the Felling, discard fruits or something. Alright. When this hits a hero, create a gold token, that's fine. So Sawbones is one of those allies that does kind of need to die on sight. But we could also let it live for a turn, especially since we're like frozen to death here. So they do this, they play on an Inca, they attack with an Inca. It's like fine. This might be a case where we're not supposed to just slam the frozen just yet. This could be a case where we're just supposed to like hammer allies. Yeah, it's like a little bit unfortunate, but I think that might be correct. I think we're supposed to maybe take a turn off to just kill Sawbones. Keep the board a little bit clear, and then once they kind of like stumble for a turn, that's when we frozen. Although it's like pretty high value to frozen right now. I think like 5-ish. Or I guess they're not gonna swing this turn, that kind of makes sense as well. Yeah, it's probably just too high value to frozen right away, right? We Arsenal the Pulse, which is awkward, but like it's still fine to just like block out against allies. So now they're playing in the post compass game, which is pretty big deal for us. Means that they're gonna have to like work hard to get go again, like using like their Major Master Boots and stuff. Right, Oakenold is one of those things that can kill Humperdinck. But they do have the early Sawbones, so if they're able to get an early Humperdinck out here, then it gets like pretty awkward. Because we would have to take a turn to kill Sawbones, and then we'd take a turn to kill Humperdinck. Let's hope they don't like randomly hit up top. Chum is like reasonable, especially if they can't like attack with it right away. I don't think this is too bad for us just yet. Right, there's Cuddy, another interesting ally. I feel like I don't see a ton of, but the 4 health is actually quite good. Actually, I wonder if Brody was running this in this list. I didn't really see. Yeah, Cuddy, it's definitely one of those allies that I think is a little bit tougher for your all to kill, just because like the Rock Redwood Hammer is like a little bit inconsistent. They do have quite a few allies to kind of choose from here, but playing the allies out is going to be kind of the issue for them. Right, there's Lutherholt. They're digging for something here. Don't entirely know what they are digging for though. Oh, there's Conqueror of the High Seas. That's like kind of fine-ish. Part of me just wants to like throw Crown in front of this and just cycle towards something better. We also have our Synchlo in hand, so like convert value, so I think this is fine. We'll go ahead and use our Crown on the first Conquer the High Seas. In general, I don't see a lot of Command and Conquer anymore. It's mostly just Conquer the High Seas, so saving your Crown for the first instance of that is generally fine. Seems like they're maybe just going to go for playing out an ally here or something. Oh, maybe they're going to attack instead? Oh, it seems like they are going to attack instead. That's also fine by me. So we want to prioritize the Oakenold as our like pseudo popper, basically. And I think we're maybe just going to give 2 cards here, like Arsenal Sigil. Or I guess we're going to play out the Sigil Arsenal Yoken. It's probably a little bit better. All right, so in terms of like target priority, like Sawbones is one of the higher priority ones, just because like if they combo Sawbones with a Humperdinck, then you're kind of in bad shape. So we'll go ahead and kill Sawbones first. Sigil, say go. And now the kind of burden of doing stuff is on the gravy because we basically just have the ability to swing at an ally return. Like they need the Diamond Amulet, the Lead the Charge, and the Major Master Boost to kind of like develop out their board. And then after that, like we basically get the opportunity to freely swing at allies basically before that kind of. Right, there's Portside, A-okay with me. Right, there's another Anka, so 3 Ankas already out. Anka notably doesn't do a ton versus us, but is just a 2 for 5 kind of pretty decent stat line. All right, so unfortunately there is a Conquer of the High Seas, a little bit annoying here, but not the end of the world. I'm going to just seeds this. We'll lose our Oaken, which gets a little awkward if they try to play out something big, but if they don't, then it's kind of fine. I think our turn is just going to be like Arsenal Sigil, playing Swabby or something. If they had like something bigger in the yard, like I guess they do have a Chum, which we can kind of leave on the board since we have like another target to kill with Anka. But if they had something bigger in the yard, like a Humperdinck, then I would be trying to keep the Oakenold ideally. But I don't see like we can let Chum live for a turn. It's not a huge deal, especially when we have something to target anyways. Yeah, a lot of people like Sledge in this matchup just to deal with Chum, but it's not super efficient to Sledge, especially like when you want to save your tunic counter for like other more important effects, like maybe on like a pummel or like just using it for quick dodge flexors, whatever, to gain 2 life. And it seems like they're maybe just going to go for playing out an ally here, which will not get go again, so it's fine. And I think Cuddy is actually probably higher priority than Anka, just because it has the ability to technically go wider. So I think we're going to go ahead and kill Cuddy as a priority. I think we also may have the opportunity to block a little bit more last turn, but this is still fine. Being at 4 health is like pretty good. We'll go ahead and just even out life totals a little bit. First plow is quite nice. We don't have the first round of decompose, but we can actually get there with the root bound, right? Because we have 3 here, and then we can plow afterwards, which is fine. This hand's like surprisingly good. Notably, we're not going to have like anything to do with the Eisen unless we like play it out during our turn. But if they like use their last Conqueror of the High Seas, I think I'm fine with this getting eaten. And yeah, they're going to be really constrained for action points at this point. All right, so this is the last Conqueror of the High Seas, which also means we can probably just use up the rest of our armor here. Like, we could let this die. It's kind of fine to let this die. But we might as well just get the extra point of value or whatever. It's not a ton of other like good ways to use armor in this matchup, feels like. So you might as well just use it on Conqueror more than anything. Still have that Mice Touch in the bin, which you can maybe also recur for later if they try to set up a big Humperdinck combo. So what is, I guess, like the gravy combo that they try to set up against us? It obviously has to do with Humperdinck. And then I think it has to involve also like 1 or 2 of the Sawbones. I think is how they typically do it, or at least how I've seen someone try to do it. The problem with that is that like you need a lot of resources to like play out 2 Sawbones, play out Humperdinck, and then also like just like swing with Humperdinck on the same turn. Like it's very, very awkward to get all of that to line up. Especially after like Compass goes. It gets quite awkward. Right, seems like they're just discarding extra chum. That's okay with me. And I think here we'll go ahead and just like play out Mount Eisen. We're not going to make a Frostbite. We'll just kind of clear our arsenal for something better. Forgot that this doesn't count as like an empty equipment slot, so we're technically not getting the Frostbite. But we're going to go ahead and kill Limpet here, I think, just to kind of clear that. And then I think we're arsenaling Plow to deal with Chum. Just because it's one of our like 6 attacks, basically. And Rootbound is fine to hold on to, I think. You basically just want to get as much block value as you can. I think it's like a little bit awkward just because we drew all reds, but not the end of the world. They're still very constrained by the action points. Right, so they are going to get Gogan off this, which is fine. They play out another ally in the back end or whatever. Yeah, so this is A-okay with us, I think. We're going to go ahead and just get the value out of Unforgetting and Forgiving. And then I assume that they're just going to play out like a Swabby or something here. Maybe even like a Chum. They want to get ambitious. And then our turn's probably like Plow Under, Pulling Tunic, Sigil, Arsenal, Oakenold. Yeah, I think Arsenal prioritization is quite important in this matchup. Like you do just kind of have to get in the habit of like arsenaling your functionally your poppers, right? All right, there's Humperdinck, which will I'm sure be coming back for us later. I think I'm actually going to try to bait them into activating Chum here. It'd be profoundly greedy if they went for it, but you always got to check, right? We do have Decompose. We probably should have checked that earlier, but that's fine. I assume we did, right? Because we were kind of talking about doing this anyways. Unfortunate thing is we won't get their arsenal, but that's still kind of okay. So they only have 1 more Chum in the bin, which means this Oakenold can deal with that. They do have the Cuddies, which are kind of an interesting include. A little bit tougher for our deck to deal with, but not by like a ton. And now we're kind of pulling our line when we draw back into our Fellings and stuff. It's also kind of funny that we've seen all 3 of our Sigils as well. But we're in pretty good shape this game. I don't think that we're at risk of dying necessarily anytime soon. And we've also got all of the Conqueror of the High Seas out of the way, which I think is a pretty big game. So this is looking maybe like it is kind of similar to a lot of the lists we were seeing from Nats this weekend with the Eye of Ophidia. I don't fully like the eyes. I kind of do get Eye of Ophidia in just like terms of like smoothing out your draws for like cards like Chart the High Seas or whatever. But like otherwise, it's like kind of whatever ish. I don't know. It's like fine, but I almost wonder if there are like maybe better blues. Maybe not though. Like two opt is like quite powerful. So also we blew up Compass like pretty early in this game, but like one thing that you can do in this matchup is like you don't have to blow up Compass right away. Like you can kind of just like play on like the clear ally axis until you just like they don't have like a good enough board to the point where you have to like clear allies, or you can just like blow it up whenever the time comes, basically. What do we have here? So we just double filter pitching the plow. Could also just like get rid of the CNC. I think I'm just gonna kill Anka though. So Diamond Amulet is part one of the way they get to like most of the way there to the Humperdinck combo. I think they have one Sawbones already gone, so they have two Sawbones left in the deck. So the way they typically do it is by doing two Sawbones, but I don't know how feasible that is currently. They need a lot of resources to get to that point. It looks like they're going to discard Swabby. That's fine. Very interesting. They didn't have a discard outlet on their turn. Put CNC on the top. All right, Call to the Grave. What are we getting here? How many Call to the Graves have we seen? We've seen two Call to the Graves. So, okay, so they're halfway there to their Humperdinck combo. Or, like, I guess a third of the way there. The other, like, alternative mode of Call to the Grave is using it to get, like, a back out, the one of, like, back alley break line from the deck into the yard, so you get, like, an action point. It turns it into, like, a pseudo action speed blink. And Tip the Barkeep is another one of those ways they can, like, net action points after the compass is gone. It seems like they're maybe on the plan of just trying to like save allies while I like maybe they're trying to like save allies while I like theoretically do nothing. But obviously we have like the open hold here, which is more than nothing. I think it's definitely worth it to just send it at them to get a little bit of point damage on the board. Might unironically just discard this Blizzard just to get it out of our deck. The one of Blizzard is sometimes good, but like also sometimes a liability. So we might not need it here. I think we'll go ahead and just get our 9 value here. Or I guess it's like, what, 15 value here or whatever. Pretty solid. I think we'll just get this out of our hand as well and Arsenal the Plounder as a priority. So we do need to find our ways to deal with Humperdinck, which involve like Mangle, Oakenold, K0, whatever. I guess we're arsenaling Plow and then holding on Shelter. Felling is also another one. So now Felling is going to be our priority for killing Humperdinck. So how many Fellings do we have left? We have one more Felling. We have 3 Mangles and 2 Okens. So I think we're just going to plow here. Let's go ahead and like overpitch, I guess, a little bit, like pitch a Shelter in this. So they're going to basically try to catch us with our pants down a little bit and try to get us to like overcommit, and then they resolve a Humperdinck and then we can't kill it or whatever. Oh, it seems like they maybe just like gave up on that point, which is kind of fair. Like, I don't know. It doesn't get a ton better. Let's see what they're running. So this does not look exactly. I think Brody's on like what I think 9 tipple or whatever. So this is more like a 6 tipple list. I think this is the other list that we saw that was made like the Jacob Shaker list or whatever. Was Jacob Shaker running the Cutty Sharks? That's very interesting. But anyways, like once you blow up Compass, the ways that they have to like come back from that are kind of few and far between. Like they need to basically like have the amulet, the Mage Master Boots, the Gold Kiss Rum, and then they also need like they basically only get one turn of like doing all that, and then they have to like figure out ways to like also swing a Humperdinck. Like the way they like come back from that is like it just seems like there's so many steps they have to involve, and if they like take a break from like playing out allies, which our opponent kind of did here, then we could just get to send like numbers at them, which is pretty good as well. So I don't know, this I can see why this matchup is unfavored. Like I can see why people think this matchup is unfavored or whatever, and I can see why it could actually be unfavored against like very high level players or whatever. But it seems like there's a lot of moving parts that I don't fully understand. That like I don't know. It seems like a lot has to go right for them to like get around like what I'm doing at 0, like just killing allies every turn, and then also just like arsenaling our pseudo poppers to deal with cards like Humperdinck and stuff like that. So anyways, that was the great matchup, which I think is the matchup I spent the most amount of time kind of like working on. I think it's still good, like especially into less experienced gravies. I need to figure out if I can like enlist someone from a pro team to like play against me and like see what happens when you play against like one of like the best gravies in the world or whatever. Because I feel like there is maybe play that they have. It just involves like a lot of setup and like I don't know. I don't fully see it being like super consistent, like how they managed to like kind of deal with the Jarl just kill every ally kind of strat. But yeah, if anyone knows how they end up dealing with that, let me know. I assume it involves something like double Sawbones plus Humperdinck plus some like netting a bunch of action points and then killing you with like a Humperdinck swing. But like I don't know. It seems like just super inconsistent. But anyways, this was kind of like my run through, I guess, of the deck that I brought to Nats. I think I did pretty well. Like I'm pretty happy going like 7-1-3 over the course of CC. I think I could have definitely done a little bit better in like my drafts and stuff, but I think I overall I'm like pretty proud of myself for going to my first Nats and also doing like pretty well. So yeah, anyways, thank you all for watching. And yeah, if you want to see more Jarl content in the future, let me know. It's definitely a deck that's a little bit hard to record for just because the games do take a little bit longer. But yeah, definitely going to be willing to kind of showcase it on the channel as well. Yeah, thank you to all the people who also, I guess, saw me at Nats and like came up to me and said hi. I really appreciate it. And I also hope you all kind of enjoyed your signed promo cards that I gave out. I gave out a couple like Shifting Winds of the Mystic Beast with new cards, Shifting Winds of the Mystic Beast with like cards written on them from High Seas that are funny things to like maybe Crouching Tigers, like Sea Legs or like Jack Be Nimble or whatever. I think that was like a really fun time as well. So thank you all for, I guess, coming to say hi to me and Nats as well. But yeah, with that, I think we're going to wrap it up today. So thank you all for watching, and yeah, see you all next time. And a special thank you to all the folks who decided it would be a good idea to give us $2 on Patreon. We really appreciate the support, but it's obviously never required.